afternoon, everyone. On behalf of the Center for Chinese Studies here at the University of Hawaii at Manoa, I would like to welcome everyone to our Fall 2024 CCS webinar series and our last session for this semester today that is featured as an interdisciplinary panel discussion on the topic Taixu's Perception of Christianity, Insights from Early 20th Century Chinese Buddhist Teacher. After a brief presentation by our guest speaker, Peter Boros, who is currently a Fulbright visiting student researcher affiliated with the Department of Religions and Ancient Civilization here at UH Manoa, he will be joined by Professor Michelle Moore from UH Manoa and Professor Benoit Vermander from Fudan University, Shanghai, in a discussion exploring several facets of Christianity's perception in East Asia and Buddhist responses to it. A fuller introduction of all three speakers will follow after these announcements. My name is Yuming Bao, and I'm currently serving as the CCS Director. My home department is East Asian Languages and Literatures, where I research and teach 20th century Chinese literature, film, and culture. I would also like this opportunity here to introduce our CCS staff that includes Associate Director Dr. Ni Zhang, who will monitor the chat room and assist with any logistical queries you may have about today's session. Please note that this session will be recorded and then uploaded to our YouTube channel, where you can also find previously recorded CCS webinar sessions in case you missed them. Our full CCS webinar program flyer for this semester can be found on our CCS website. If you now click on your chat room tool, you can see the links for our CCS YouTube channel and CCS website displayed there. Today's session is also kindly co-sponsored by the Department of Religions and Ancient Civilization here at UH Manoa, the Erfdos Laurent University Chinese Department, the Kienzi Foundation, and Fulbright in Hungary. We would like to thank our co-sponsors for their kind support. The last 30 minutes of our today's session will be reserved for the Q&A, and we kindly ask that you use the Q&A tool for submitting your comments and questions to the speakers. Please don't wait up until the last minute to post your comments. Ask no more than 2 questions and keep them concise so everyone can be accommodated. As much as possible, questions will be answered in the order they have been submitted, but we might also synthesize or group together similar questions in order to make the best use of our time. We further reserve the right to dismiss comments and questions that are not civil or relevant in tone. After today's session, you will receive a brief survey, and we would greatly appreciate your constructive feedback. And now it's a great honor and pleasure to introduce our moderator and one of the panelists today, Professor Michelle Moore, who is a professor in the Department of Religions and Ancient Civilization here at UH Manoa, where he currently also serves as the department chair. From 2022 to 23, he received a Fulbright U.S. Scholar Award to conduct research and teach at the National Taiwan University. His expertise includes Japanese Zen, Meiji religious and intellectual history, and meditation texts produced during the 6 dynasties. His last book, entitled Buddhism, Unitarianism, and the Meiji Competition for Universality, was published in 2014 by Harvard University Press, and it examines cross-cultural and cross-religious encounters in 19th century Japan. For more information, see his personal website, the link of which you can now see in the chat forum. So, without further ado, let me turn over to Professor Michelle Moore, who will introduce the other 2 panelists.
Welcome, everyone. If you can hear me, it's perfect. The miracle of technology is working. It's my great pleasure to be with you in this webinar and to introduce our 2 distinguished guests. First of all, Peter Boros, who is our speaker and a PhD candidate in sinology at Eötvös Loránd University in Budapest, Hungary. He's currently a Fulbright visiting student researcher affiliated with our department, and his research focuses precisely on the Buddhist-Christian dialogue in early 20th century China. This is the topic of his presentation today. He's Recent publications include articles on Taixu's efforts in reforming education and meditation as a basis for dialogue in the writings of Thomas Merton and Thich Nhat Hanh. Our first commentator is Professor Benoit Vermander, who is a professor of philosophy at Fudan University in Shanghai. He also serves as the director of the Xu Guangqi Dialogue Center at Fudan University. He's notably the co-author of Shanghai Sacred, The Religious Landscape of a Global City, that was published in 2018. And he's the author of The Encounter of Chinese and Western Philosophies, published in 2023, and Textual Patterns and Cosmic Designs in Early China, published this year. Without further ado, I will ask Peter Borosz to give us his presentation. Thank you again for joining us today.
Thank you very much for the kind introduction, Michel. And thank you everyone for being here. It is truly a great honor and pleasure to be part of the CCS webinar series this fall, and also to have be able to engage in the discussion with Michel and Benoit, two distinguished scholars of the field. So I'm very much looking forward to the discussion part as well, and of course, questions from the audience. So without further ado, I would start my presentation, and I would approximately take around 30 minutes to deliver the talk, and then afterwards we will switch to the discussions and questions. So let me share my presentation slides. Perfect. So if all is well, you see the slides. So as already shown in the flyer for this event, our topic today is Taixu's perception of Christianity, insights from an early 20th century Buddhist teacher. And basically it draws on the research which I am doing for my PhD dissertation, as well as what I was conducting here at the University of Hawaii during this semester. So I'm very glad to share these findings with you in this presentation. So as an overview for the talk, I will first just briefly introduce my choice of topic, why exactly Taixu, and why exactly his approach to Christianity. And then a few words on the importance of Christianity, meaning why it was important for Taixu and how this importance can be seen from his works. Afterwards, I will turn to the types of Christianity with which he was acquainted. What we can see from his writings and from the meetings of his dialogue partners from the Christian side. So basically to see while he was forming his views on Christianity, what kind of impulses he received. And then on this line, I will introduce briefly the dialogue partners, the main dialogue partners from the Christian side, which Taixu had, which will also enlighten the ways or like the types of Christianity he received exposure to. And then I will give a quick overview of Taixu's views of Christianity, how they changed over time, and what were the main tenets regarding the religion. And finally, draw some conclusions. So first, why Taixu? So as you probably mostly know, Master Taixu was one of the leading reformers of the late 19th, early 20th century Chinese Buddhism. And in this capacity, he coined the term, multiple terms. One of the most important is Renqian Fojiao, which is sometimes translated as humanistic Buddhism, but I prefer the human Buddhism, or maybe Buddhism among the people as translations, because these give back the essence of what Taixu was talking about, namely to refocus Buddhism from a religion which is focusing on a good rebirth, and then basically good rebirth and continuation after death, to a religion focusing on present-day human life, and how this religion, how Buddhism can contribute to the betterment of present-day human life, and also to bring Buddhism out from large mountain monasteries to the people. So basically, this is maybe why Buddhism among the people is a good translation. And the second thing which makes him also important is that as this leading figure of early 20th century Buddhism, those trends which present day can be called engaged Buddhism, such as the Fo Guangshan in Taiwan, or the Tzu Chi Foundation again in Taiwan, or Thich Nhat Hanh's work starting from Vietnam, they all draw on Taixu's approach to focus on the present world. And on the other side, what also makes him interesting is that he actually maintained close connections to Christian missionaries in China, as well as Chinese Christians, and also traveled to Europe for a year-long trip in Western Europe and the United States, where he aimed to observe how Christian societies worked. So he did have a substantial exposure to Christianity. So his views can be interesting and well-founded in this way. So why is Christianity important for Taixu and for this period? So basically, as you mostly know, this time is the golden age of missions, or sometimes called the golden age of missions in China, because it resulted after the Opium Wars. It resulted in the opening of China and the stellar rise in the missionaries who arrived to the country, and also in believer numbers. Therefore, basically all leaders of other religious traditions had to face the question how to respond to this swift rise of Christianity, and Taixu was one of these leaders. And this importance is also shown in his discussions of the topic, because out of all the works, all the texts which he has written and which are collected in the collected works of Master Taixu, these are 1,447 texts, and out of these, 264 actually mention Christianity, which is a large number from a monk who was generally focusing on Buddhist topics. And this number is also important because it is the most among other religions besides Buddhism. So all the numbers of mentions of Hinduism, Islam, even Confucianism and Taoism all feature smaller. So it seems that it was important for him. What also shows the importance for Taixu is that basically this chart shows that he discussed Christianity throughout his life, throughout his active life. So this text starting in 1914 and even until 1946, every year mostly has a mention of Christianity. And here it is displayed in two ways. First, in the writings of Taixu on Christianity, and second, the speeches. You can see that the writings start earlier and they are mostly equally spread over the time, and then the speeches concentrate on certain events such as Taixu's trip or other events like the war, the resistance against the Japanese invasion. So all these events seem to have these speeches culminate around them. So Taixu discussed it in many occasions throughout his life, and what is also interesting, that in numerous locations. So one might imagine that he would focus his talks on Christianity on large cities in China, but this chart shows that he actually talked or mentioned Christianity in numerous smaller cities also in the country, and which is not shown on this chart, also in Europe certainly, and in Southeast Asia in some places. So it exists in many occasions throughout his life and in numerous places. And what is also highly interesting in terms of these references is that he doesn't only reference Christianity when discussing the connections between Buddhism and Christianity, or Christianity and other religions, but also on occasions which seem unexpected. It might seem unexpected. For example, in a speech given in 1926 at the Jiangsu Provincial Medical University, where he was basically elaborating on the connections of Buddhism and medicine to students of the medical university, just to prove his argument about how mental states can affect physical health, he quotes Jesus after quoting previously some texts from Confucius, some texts, some other Taoist texts. He quotes Jesus saying, "If through telling a sentence to a sick person, their spirit becomes joyful, the illness disappears. Thus, when Jesus told the lame man that his foot is healthy, the lame became able to walk." So in this occasion, it almost seems that that Christianity for him became part of this, the package of texts and religions which he references. So certainly for a Chinese Buddhist monk, referencing Taoist and Confucian texts is understandable, but apparently he also references Christianity in this way. So after seeing that he discussed it in many occasions and in many ways, the question arises: what types of Christianity he had the exposure to? And the response is that mostly Protestant Christianity. And to prove this, I will draw on two different types of information. First, an analysis of the terms which he used regarding Christianity, and second, analysis of the dialogue partners which he had based on in relation to Christianity. So, firstly, the terms of Christianity. The term which he references most in this relation is Jidujiao, which even now is mostly used for Protestant Christianity, and in his usage is also mostly referring to Protestant Christianity. There is some ambiguity and there is some change over time in the usage of the term. So even especially at the beginning, it is also used generally to denote Christianity, as this quote shows. So he says, clearly, the Old Testament of Christianity says that God created the myriad things of the world. So referencing to the Old Testament, he already uses Jidu Jiao. So basically referring to the whole of Christianity. But then most of the time, he uses it to reference Christianity, such as in this instance where he writes, Catholicism arrived in Sri Lanka first with the Portuguese, and Protestant Christianity was introduced after with the British invasion. So basically, here it is clear that he differentiates between the two. And a prominent mention of Jidu Jiao in his texts is the referencing of the YMCA, which he refers to using Jidu Jiao, and which he mentions quite a few times, because throughout the country, throughout China, he gave speeches to the YMCAs of the different locations, which also shows an interesting angle of his engagement with Christianity, and shows that he was open to engage with representatives of the religion. And second most frequent is the term Yejiao. And this can, yes, so this is mostly used to reference all Christianity. And this is an interesting term, and it can be put in parallel with the term Huojiao. So it seems to be logical that it was a term handy for him to reference all of Christianity, because it has the same logic as the term for Buddhism. So he uses this to reference all Christianity. For example, in ancient times, Christianity in Rome and Confucianism in China were both living and active religions. Or Christian churches have global organizations. For Catholicism, the Church of Rome, it's needless to say, but others such as the Protestant, Anglican, and Methodist Episcopal churches also have global organizations. So when discussing these different features, he uses the term Yejiao to refer to all of Christianity. And then we arrive to the term which denotes Catholicism. And if you remember the previous slides, Jidu Jiao had 230 mentions, Yejiao around 150. This is substantially smaller. So the instances where he mentions Catholicism specifically are much less than the other religions. And it featured in instances where obviously mentions, mostly when he mentions representatives of Christianity, Catholicism, such as here mentioning the Bishop of Nanjing, Paul Yupin. And then finally, there is also an interesting term which is mentioned the least in this set, the Yesujiao, which is sometimes used as an extended version of Yejiao, but sometimes it also refers to Protestantism. So in terms of Christianity, he uses it in this way. This heavenly spirit is called Brahma in India and God in Christianity. And here, yes, Rutiao stays for Christianity. And again, he also mentions it in the way referring to Protestantism. So if you look at the whole chart, it is immediately visible that Protestantism has the most mentions, with general discussions of Christianity coming second, and then Catholicism only way behind in the third place. So what ends up happens if we look at the different dialogue partners Taixu was in touch with during his lifetime? It displays a similar picture. So as you can see, the green color refers again to the Protestant believers, followers, and the purple one for Catholic. So as you can see, there's an overwhelming majority of Protestant. These mentions always, so these are the mentions which can be found in the collected works of Master Taixu and in his biography, the Taixu Tashi Nianpu. So these are the mentions in these two texts. And if we zoom in, we can see a larger, like give a clearer picture and a larger variety of the different denominations of Protestantism with which he was familiarized. So the first person who has the largest amount of mentions is actually a highly interesting person called Zhang Chunyi, who was an official, a scholar official in the Qing dynasty, and then later became interested in Christianity, and then even converted to the Anglican faith, because he believed that Buddhism has numerous advantages sides as well, but Christianity will be the most effective to reform the hearts and minds of Chinese people at a new era, establishing the Republic of China, which was a view not uncommon among fellow thinkers of the time. So he became Anglican, but afterwards became disillusioned with the specific way it was practiced in China by the representatives, and converted back to Buddhism, while maintaining that the essence of Christianity is very, very close to Buddhism. So afterwards, he aimed to develop a Buddhicized Christianity to combine the theological aspects of Christianity with insights from Buddhism. So it's a very interesting endeavor, and Taixu maintained close connection with him, as the mentions also show. So his ideas were fundamentally influencing Taixu's views as well. And then the second most mentioned concerns Drayden Lindsley Phelps, who was an American Baptist missionary in China and a professor at the West China University in Chengdu. They met with Taixu also in the United States at Berkeley, and then also in China. He invited Taixu numerous times to the West China University to deliver talks. So there is also a strong connection and discussion. And then the third is Gilbert Reid, who was an American Presbyterian missionary, and who founded the mission among the higher classes of China, in order to reach the elite, Chinese elite, and in his proselytizing endeavor. And he founded he founded an organization where his aim was to have Christian and Buddhist scholars and laymen meet, and then he also invited Taixu to talk in one of these occasions alongside him, which talk I will mention later. And then if you turn to the second half of the chart, it is clear that so here already some Catholic persons feature, most prominently Cardinal Po Yupin, with whom they founded an organization together in 1943, an Association of Chinese Religious Believers. So most of the mentions when the name of the cardinal comes up is in relation to this organization. And then again, Millikan, an American Methodist missionary. And then there are some mentions of a French archbishop, most likely the Archbishop of France, of Paris, sorry, because that is where he met the Archbishop in 1929. But here they apparently have only discussed questions of the state of religions in China, so nothing deep in terms of the specificities of Catholicism. And then finally, who apparently has a few mentions only in the corpus, but who was also a prominent dialogue partner of Taixu, is Carl Ludwig Reichelt, Norwegian Lutheran missionary, whom Taixu also invited to his World Buddhist conferences in Lushan to give talks about Christianity. So there is also a strong connection. So if you look at the whole map again, you can see that that Taixu maintained connections predominantly with Protestant missionaries, many from different types of Protestant denominations, and the nature of connections is also different because all the mentions of Protestant missionaries mostly refer to actual meetings, actual discussions, or texts of these persons, where the other the mentions of the Catholic representatives are mostly featuring the meetings between Taixu and these people. So after his introduction to where Taixu was receiving his information about Christianity from, let's turn to Taixu's views of Christianity. So what can generally be said, and what is also already sometimes be highlighted in the literature, is that Taixu's views evolved from critical to partially appreciative of Christianity. So if we dive more deeply into it, I will focus on 4 more texts from a period of 15 years in kind of the middle part of Taixu's career. So if you look at the early writings around 1914, Taixu's main argument is that Christianity lost moral control over Europe, which resulted in World War I, which he says unleashed murderous perversions on the world. And his reason to say this is because, in his view, science discredited all arguments based on God, and therefore Christianity lost its moral grip over European societies. This argument is again put forward in a later text in 1924, which is titled "My View on Religions," which is a comprehensive text on the relationship between different religions and how they evolved over time. And here he clearly shows, as it is displayed also on the chart on the right, that the first level of religions is the belief in spirits, and then come all theistic religions, where he groups Islam, Christianity, Hinduism together, and Judaism as well. And yeah, so this group is focused on the belief in God. And then afterwards come the levels of Taoism and Confucianism, and finally levels of Theravada Buddhism and the final level of Mahayana Buddhism. So again, here the argument is that it is necessarily in the lower level because of its belief of God. And then in later texts, he also goes more deeply into the arguments why Buddhism is more on a higher level than Christianity. And this is the speech he gave at the event organized by Gilbert Reid, where the missionary spoke first, highlighting the role of love in Christianity, in the theological approach of Christianity. And then Taixu gives this talk where he ultimately concludes that love is ultimately rooted in self-love. Therefore, it cannot be a perfect object of adoration, and therefore Buddhist compassion is superior. So he advocates for the approach of Buddhist compassion. Nevertheless, as I've already said it before, there seems to be a shift in his views in later times, which is most likely due to numerous reasons. First, certainly his continuing exposure to the writings and discussions of missionaries and other Chinese Christians, and also, which he references numerous times, his trip to Western Europe and the United States, where he witnessed the workings of Christianity. And then thirdly, the external environment for religions in in China, because during at the start of the Republic of China, the official support for and protection of government of religions from the government ceased, and therefore numerous temples were utilized for governmental purposes, and therefore he started to advocate for a joint action of religions to help and protect the interests of all of these faiths. So later texts start to reflect this change in his attitude. One of the most important is a text from 1931, just 2 years after his trip to Europe and Western Europe and the United States, which took place between 1928 and 29. And this is called Religion's Contribution to Modern Humanity. And here he basically puts forward the claim that all religions can contribute to society's welfare in numerous ways, and they can and they should work together to achieve this, among other, to point beyond material reality and establish a deeper moral structure for society. And in a text which is maybe one of the most quoted and one of the most rich in terms of his discussion of Christianity, is a text which he delivered in 1938 in Chengdu at the West China Union University at the invitation of Regent Lindsay Phelps. And so this is called China Needs Christianity, Why Europe and America Need Buddhism. And so here, mostly this text also confirms the assumption that Taixu was appreciative of the practical features of Christianity, because he says that China should learn the organizational ability of Europe, because the reason why European states became so powerful is to be found in their faith in Christianity, which became widespread in the Middle Ages, and therefore since that time, through the weekly rituals, it unified the spirit of Americans and then Europeans, and therefore they can develop supreme organizational abilities, which then that leads to supreme abilities and achievements in science and technology. But what is even more interesting, if we look deeper into this question, is that that he one of the ways he explains the beneficial aspects of Christianity is that ritual music is of supreme importance to unify the spirit of all Christians, and this can also be seen in his that he thought this as a significant point. It can be also seen in his later actions, that he actually composed numerous songs for Buddhist audiences, and aimed to use these songs in proselytizing or acquiring new believers. So the importance of ritual music is, I think, something to think about. And then, of course, the other side of the equation is that Europe and America should take over Buddhism as a scientific faith, and this would then unite their broken life, where their faith is unscientific and their life is scientific. Buddhism could unite these two aspects and develop a wholesome European and American life again. And what also needs to be highlighted from this text is that in some aspects it also even goes beyond earlier assumptions that Taixu was only appreciative of the practical aspects of Christianity, because in this text he also seems to speak positively about the theological feature of Christianity, saying that given that the object of devotion is Christianity is entirely singular, it can create a unified spirit very well. As it influences the ways of thinking, it arranges them into uniformity. So it means that that the aspect, that the theological assumption that God is one helps create this unified spirit and these practical features. So certainly, again, theology, the positive feature of theology lies in the effectiveness of it in terms of practical benefits, but still it shows appreciation for a theological part. Yes. So to conclude, as a leading reformer of Taixu's views, as a leading reformer of Chinese Buddhism, Taixu's views are worthy of analysis and can provide new insights into Christianity, or into the Christianity of early 20th century China, and also how the two religions can be put into dialogue. And if you look at his text, he discussed Christianity throughout his life in numerous occasions, as we've seen, and also so numerous occasions and numerous locations throughout the country. And he even had he mentioned the religion in unexpected ways or in unexpected occasions, sometimes along with Buddhism, Confucianism, and Taoism, quoting it as just normal along with these other religions. And then the religion what he was exposed to, it can be said it was mostly Protestant Christianity, which can be seen from both the terms and the dialogue partners. So the terms he used for Christianity and the dialogue partners he met. And if you look at the concrete views of him regarding Christianity, it can actually be said that there is an evolution from harshly critical, especially criticizing the theological assumptions and the belief in God, to a partially appreciative, where he appreciates numerous practical aspects and even some theological aspects of the religion. And before the final remarks, I would like to show you a website which I developed with a colleague with whom we conducted the research, corpus analysis research of Taixu's collected works, the 5 million Chinese character corpus, from which most of the results in present analysis were taken off. So I would swiftly turn to this website. So this is the website of our project, and here you can find all the charts and timelines and maps which we made in relation to Taixu's understanding of Christianity, and even more than what I have shown today. And the benefit of this site is that the maps are interactive. So if you have the chart which I showed you earlier, if you move your cursor on the particular dot, it will show you the exact talk and the exact location and exact time of its writing. And again, in terms of the map, which I have shown earlier, you can zoom in and zoom out and see all the mentions in other areas as well. And if you move your cursor on the other on the concrete dots, then it will show the exact talk and the exact location and time of the speech. So with this, I would like to conclude my talk. Thank you very much for your attention, and I will be looking forward to all the questions and comments from the discussant and the audience. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. I really appreciate your detailed and very precise presentation, which highlights not only the complexity of his thought, but also the evolution of his thought alongside time and all the details about the different types of exposure he had to different brands of Christianity, different missionaries, is really helpful to understand and contextualize his understanding in the evolution of his thought. I will now ask Professor Vermander to deliver his comments.
Many thanks, Michel. I hope you hear me well. There should be no problem, right? Good. So thanks again to Peter, I'm sorry, exactly for the reasons that Michel pointed out. It was wonderful to hear a talk that stressed so much the evolving nature of Master Taixu's thought, and that were combining quantitative, lexical, and content analysis. So I want to develop more all the qualities of this talk and everything we learned from it. I will rather come to the questions that it arises from. My main question might sound a bit strange, but I think you will understand soon what I mean. It will be, where is China in this context? What I mean is, you do give us a wonderful presentation of an interreligious dialogue or interreligious interaction at least, but it happens in a political context which is incredibly loaded when it comes to national and political upheavals happening in China during the same period. And one wonders how Taixu's religious thinking is influenced or influences this national political situation. Of course, you do point out the Chinese dimension of Buddhism, and I especially like the sentence in which Taixu says, China will need more Christianity and the West will need more Buddhism, something like that, which is actually a sentence you wouldn't hear in today's China. You know, it is a sentence when one really ponders over it, which is wonderfully tolerant and open, you know, at the same time recognizing things that can be lacking in the China of its time and pointing out things that are lacking in another civilization. So somehow it's an extremely distanced position. And the tolerance and openness it testifies to will be very hard to find in the same way of expressing it, at least in today's China. So we shouldn't overlook, I will say, the potential openness of such a statement. At the same time, it seems to be very far away from the political feelings and movements happening in China at the same time. So building on the question I just asked, I would say, to what extent was for Taixu Buddhism a Chinese religion? To what extent was Buddhism a Chinese religion for Taixu? What was the connection between the national essence of China and Buddhism per se? Was it possible to build up an interreligious dialogue that was somehow freed from national considerations? I will add a last remark, which is actually linked to what I just said, and I come back to your translation of Zhenjian Fujiao. So I agree with your interpretation of it, not exactly with your translation of it. I will not use the word people, because the word people refers to a group. It might be national group, it might be national group, or even religious group, chosen people, for instance, and so on and so on. In Chinese, everything that has to do with popular, people, and so on will be translated by Minjian, Songjiao, popular religion, things like that. Zhenjian is a more philosophical term than that. It really relates to Zhen, which means Buddhism among human beings, or this world Buddhism, Buddhism of this world. But of course, I do agree with your interpretation, which is eventually it is a mode of religion that doesn't want to go into escapism, that want to be meaningful for the world as it is, for the world of human beings. So it is a worldly, this world Buddhism, but at the same time, Zhenjian Fujiao has no social or political connotation. This is what is very interesting. It remains a philosophical expression, not a social or a political one. So again, it makes me ask you from another direction, but all those directions converge together, how to combine, I would say, Taixu's interreligious focus with his social and political viewpoint. And I will stay that the floor is yours, Michel.
Thank you for your response, Professor Fermander. I have so many questions that I will not be able to cover all of them, but we can continue this conversation in person. But let me just address some of the aspects that I think might be meaningful for our audience One of them is the fact that Taixu was present in Hawaii, and the role that he played in the establishment of the International Buddhist Institute. We have a precise record of what happened when he interacted with Bishop Imamura and launched the Hawaiian chapter of the International Buddhist Institute in April 1929. So I was wondering if you came across more information about this. As Benoit emphasized, there's a strong connection with the political context in that case as well. Hawaii was not yet the 50th American state. It was in a state of colonization, basically. And the Japanese denominations were trying to gain support from Buddhists across East Asia. So I don't know if you want to address this briefly. Is there anything that you discovered that could be meaningful?
Shall I say it now or
Yes.
maybe later after? Okay, okay. Yeah, so yeah, thank you so much for both of the questions and the questions of both of you, and also for Benoit. Definitely, I think so. I will get back to that later. I mean, I will quickly respond to the question on Hawaii then, and then can get back to the other questions later. Definitely. So one of my reasons of being here is that Taixu has spent some time on his way back from California to Shanghai in 1929 at the end of his year-long journey to the West here in Hawaii. And indeed, he met Bishop Imamura Emyo of the Honganji mission, and then also Ernest Hunt, was a prominent figure of Buddhism here at the time. And yes, so what I have seen so far, in addition to what you said, is, I mean, is definitely that they, this was a time of openness also in the Honganji and in the headed by Imamura, which later became more conservative. So it was a good time for the dialogue and the establishment of the Institute of Buddhist of the World Buddhist Institute. And so the International Buddhist Institute, Taixu founded a few years earlier in Lushan, along with Japanese Buddhists. So, and indeed, during his trip also to Europe, he established a chapter in London and also in other areas. And then so yeah, it was important that he also found openness for it here. What is also interesting is that he's like, again, this discussion about music. I'm sure it was also connected because Ernest Hunt was also one of the people who wrote a book of gathas which could be sung in Buddhist practices, and which are still sung in English throughout Hawaii in the churches. So they're still in the books. So in this sense, they could also connect here. And exactly, their meeting is a bit scarcely documented. Taixu only references it in his biography, and then discusses the meeting with them and some other representatives of Buddhism around on the island. But what is also interesting, and what he takes away from his trip to Hawaii, is that he actually references afterwards in his texts and writings Hawaii numerous times, both Hawaii and Honolulu specifically, many times, around 40, 50 times in his writings. And usually when it comes up in his discussions is when he discusses global Buddhism, or the state of Buddhism globally. And he points out that the differences between the East Coast of the United States, saying that it's more European and more research focused, whereas in the West Coast and also in Hawaii, given the large Asian population, there is a substantial amount of believers in Buddhism, therefore, and also temples. Therefore, the approach to the religion is different, and it's also promising in terms of dialogue with them. So I hope to also dive deeply into this in later research, but this is maybe what I would say for now.
Yeah, thank you. Now, regarding the crucial interactions between Buddhism and Christianity, another aspect of Taixu's perception of how each tradition can contribute to the other is to take into account the context of the end of the 19th century, where Buddhism was increasingly portrayed as a rational religion, and how this particular global agenda of Buddhists across East Asia, at least, dovetailed with Taixu's agenda. I think that one of the enthusiastic proponents of this idea was Paul Karras, who published The Open Court, a periodical that featured some prominent Buddhists of the time. And in the 1928 issue of this journal, called The Open Court, we see a short but exuberant article by Clarence H. Hamilton that is titled "An Hour with Taixu, Master of the Law." And then the author recounts their discussion that focuses on the fact that Buddhism and modern science have separate origins, but that their central view is essentially alike. So there's this really very trendy view at that time that Buddhism can contribute to highlight the scientific definition or the scientific dimension of religion. I don't know to what extent you found things that would support this idea.
Yes. Okay, respond now. Yeah. Yes, definitely. Yeah, 100%. Yes, and thank you for bringing about this context. Definitely. Yeah, as you say, it was a widespread trend at the time to also probably putting against Christianity and propagating Buddhism as a rational religion. And yes, 100%. This was one of the main arguments of Taixu as well. So he has numerous texts about the relationship of Buddhism and science. And again, yes, what he talks about is that that in their approach to reality, the two are highly similar, because both aim to understand reality by somehow disintegrating it into small parts and then analyzing the ways in which these parts relate to each other and interact with each other. But how he concludes is that that Buddhism takes this endeavor one step further than science and is more developed than science, because science will always be limited by the senses when it comes to understanding reality, and Buddhism can point beyond and show what is behind this reality and beyond. So in order to develop a complete understanding of reality, one need to then go to Buddhism and not stay content with science. So,
Thank you. Yes, well, I have another question that is an extension of the initial remark about the evolution of Taixu's views on Christianity. It seems that there is still a sort of tension between Taixu's attempt to find common ground between the major religious traditions and his occasional criticism of aspects of Christianity he found irrational. And regarding the first inclination, we can examine his peculiar but fascinating interpretation of the Chinese term for religion, 宗教. And in his imagined etymology, he saw the first part, 宗, as referring to the essence of all traditions, while he considered the second part, 教, as being the expedient means used to explain it to others. So that's one dimension, but the tension comes into full display when he occasionally voices a sharp condemnation of what he understood as superstitions. And especially he singled out what he called the three core superstitions: God, the soul, and Christ. And he argued, in light of thusness, the Buddhist concept of thusness, these three doctrines are untenable. So I wonder, what is it just a matter of evolution over time, or if he's addressing different audiences in different ways? That's something I've come across in my own archival research, that often speakers are not necessarily consistent. They would say one thing to one type of audience, and then travel abroad and they say something different, and they don't really care, and they're certainly not aware that one day scholars may scrutinize their utterances and try to find some continuity in their views. What are your thoughts about that?
Yes, thank you. This is also a great insight. And yeah, I will look into it and see what type of audiences he was talking to when he was actually more positive about Christianity. This is actually a great point. So what I know so far is that when he was discussing the topic of love and ultimately concluding that compassion is superior, that was a mixed Christian and Buddhist audience in Shanghai. And then this famous speech of Chengdu, that was in a Christian university, founded by 4 Protestant mission societies and headed by a Christian president at that time. So that can play a role. However, I'm also certain that he also discussed Christianity quite favorably in occasions where there was not a substantial Christian audience. For example, the talk which I referenced in from 1926 at the medical university, those were just the students of the university, and he was especially talking about Buddhism and still mentioned Christianity in a kind of a positive way. So I think, yes, I will look into it more, and there might be some connection to this, but maybe there can still be an evolution traced in his views, and then just. Oh, Bruno, you...
Yeah, Peter, when you have finished, I would like to say something.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Great. So just the final comment to this is that like one evolution which might be seen then in what you said, that the 3 superstitions would be it would include also the person of Jesus. That there's a text about his encounter with Carlo de Greichelt in one of the conferences he invited him to, and after Reichelt's speech, he's quoted to say that now I understand that Jesus is the Tao incarnate, but now my question is if the Tao can become incarnated in all of us in the same way. So in this way, there might be an understanding that it can be connected to more Chinese rooted concepts and be understood in this intellectual context as well.
Thank you. Yeah, Professor Vermonter.
Yeah, I'd like to say something on that. That's very interesting, and for pleading for the ultimate consistency of Taixu's position. And I think it's exemplified actually by what you say about its interpretation of the word religion, which is an interesting one and not only a mythological one, if I may say so. In Zhongjiao, he finds actually the ultimate lineage of everything. So the ultimate essence of all religion, which is quite consistent with the Chuangzi, for instance. You find in chapter 33 of the Chuangzi, Qi Zhongyu Tian, their lineage is in heaven, the ultimate, ancestor of your teaching, actually, okay, is in heaven. something like that. Though there is a kernel of truth present in all religions. And at the same time, there is a Jia, though there are particular teachings that somehow might distort this original kernel of truth. And so the way Christianity understands God, soul, Christ might go against that ultimate truth, although in some circumstances they can be approached again, they might be understood according to the kernel of truth to be found among all religions. And it's also consistent actually with the idea of religion as ultimately scientific in some way. So I would say that the interplay in Taixu between instances in which he is somehow ecumenical, if I may use that word, and other instances in which he is utterly critical, doesn't go against the ultimate consistency of his position. At least that would be the way I would defend his approach and find some consistency among all the evolutions that also took place during his life and his source.
Just one more remark before we open questions to the floor. It's more a comment than a question. Is that Taixu was also an expert in Hetu Vidya, the Buddhist branch of logic and epistemology. In Chinese, is Yingming. And we know that he was hired to teach at Zhonghua University in Wuchang in 1921, where he lectured precisely on those topics, including philosophy and Hetu Vidya. So that's a part of his approach to rationality that is not only informed by Western forms of rationality. And it begs the bigger question, of course, is there only one form of rationality? Which is a topic that goes far beyond the confines of this particular webinar. I think it's about time that we let other people ask questions. Ni, if you want to relay some of the questions from the audience.
Just very quickly before we turn to that, I will just quickly respond to Benoit's points as well, which I haven't done so far. If it's okay, and then afterwards quickly we can open the floor.
Sure.
Okay. Checking my notes. Yes. So yeah, thank you so much, for the comments. And then I think one of your points was the political context of Taixu's actions and the development of his views. And yes, I completely agree with you that it highly influenced his approach to Christianity. Also just in the sense that how Christianity was regarded generally in China at the time, partially being somehow the tool and the somehow like the byproduct of imperialism, of Western imperialism in China, but on the other hand was admired and as the basis for technological advancement and yes, so the technological progress of the West, so just trying to think back on what the points you made.
My question was whether that in the way you presented, he seems to be much more an advocate of Buddhism per se, which means Buddhism as a religion, than of Chinese Buddhism or than of national rejuvenation, you know. So actually you presented first as a Buddhist master rather than a Chinese Buddhist master in a concept of national assertiveness and rejuvenation. So could you correct this image, or do you think that he was Buddhist before being Chinese? I'm sorry to ask the question in so radical a fashion, but that's for pushing you to your limits, you know.
Definitely, no, thank you so much for restating it. Yes, exactly. Yes, so I would say that there are two aspects of his approach, definitely. And certainly he was very much a Chinese Buddhist in a lot of ways, especially in his his engagement in the effort against the Japanese invasion, and then how he organized the medical corps and many such such features. But what I think why it also seems that it was more Buddhist, or like Buddhist at the first place, with which I in some sense also agree, is that I think based on his writings, it seems that his idea was that that one needs to revitalize Buddhism in China, and partially drawing on aspects of Christianity to do this, to revitalize Buddhism in China in order to revitalize the spirit of Chinese people. This would be the first step, and then as a second step, to take Buddhism to the West. And this was part of his agenda, starting the World Buddhist Institute and inviting a lot. And then one of the plans of the first meeting in 1927 in Lushan and then in Tokyo was that a joint Chinese-Japanese Buddhist mission should be sent to the West, because that would then ultimately lead to global peace. So there is this strong general aspect, I think, of his thinking, that he was concerned with the entire globe in this sense.
Yeah. But I summarize it my own way. I sense a kind of mute contradiction between what I would call the internationalist and nationalist aspects of Taixu Buddhism. That's what I would like to say. But it will require much more discussion than we can have right now.
Yeah, you're right, and also because all the aspects of his the establishment of the new seminaries, where the student monks, the new nationalist Samastrata of Buddhist monks emerged. So yes, you're completely right that there is discussion. Yes, I think I will also think about it more. Thank you. And then just a very quick response to the what you said about the term Renqian Fujiao. Yes, thank you very much. I was actually not thinking about this political loadedness of the term people, which is certainly there. So, is there a better translation you would suggest, or I will also think about it?
I think that Buddhism in this world is the best translation. Actually, Zhenjian is really in the world of men, in this world.
Buddhism in this world.
Buddhism in this world, for me, is maybe it's not so nice to hear, so there is no problem, but it's very accurate in terms of meaning, you know. Zhenjian in classical Chinese poetry is really in the world of man.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. Okay, thank you. And then we could turn to the
poetry of Bai, very well known, which finishes by Bie Yo Tian Di Fei Zhenjian. This is another word. This is not a word of man. Okay.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yes, we have a question in the chat from our colleague Jonathan Pettit, who is asking about the distinctions between Guilin Jiao, Qiansheng Jiao, and Waidao Jiao in the initial classification of religions by Taixu.
Yes, thank you very much. That is a great question. Thank you so much, Jonathan. Yes, so in Guilin Jiao, Taixu basically just describe it as the belief in spirits, in all sorts of spirits in the world, and this is so in the text he gives a chronological discussion of different religions, and this is where he starts. This is the first level, and then Tiansheng Jiao, that would be basically, they said, all religions which focus on a god, including Hinduism, Christianity, Islam, and Judaism. And he groups them all together in this category, and then explains that yes, because of this reason, because of their focus and awe and belief in a god, they're wrong, and they're necessarily not in the possession of the complete truth of reality. So they're basically misled by this assumption. And then in dialogue to this basically comes in the Wai Tao Jiao, which would be Taoism and Confucianism in his discussion. And here he explains that the reason why they are a level above all the religions believing in God is because they focus on the mind of the human. He also terms it 人心教. So basically like all those teachings focusing on the mind of the human, and they aim to develop that mind and ultimately somehow liberate it. So they're focusing not in a different entity, but just the person itself. And this is how he transitions then to Theravada, which would be again like focusing on the person, but already bringing in Buddhist truth, and then Mahayana as the ultimate, the way of the Bodhisattva to then transform the person in this way. I hope I answered. Thank you.
So there's no idea of Wai Tao being the heretical approach to religion, which is more common in Buddhist texts. In that case, it's just outside of the correct way of Buddhism, but it's not labeled. I mean, labeling Taoism and Confucianism as heretical seems pretty strong.
Yes, I would say here it only means that those religions which are, or those traditions which are already almost on the right way, but not Buddhist. Yes. So,
Okay.
yeah, I would say that there is no heresy involved.
Okay. Maybe you could say a little bit more about the different brands of Christianity, because you in the section where you discussed the different types of Christianity, you gave a hierarchy based on the number of mentions and then the different people with whom Taixu interacted. But throughout his stay in Shanghai and his trips abroad, Taixu must have been exposed to a broad range of not only Christian denominations, but also people from other religious traditions. So do we know anything about that? Whether he could have interacted with people from the Theravada tradition or representatives of Hinduism. I mean, all those people who became famous after the 1893 World Parliament of Religions in Chicago. This was a time period during which everyone was attuned to those new traditions that became famous overnight.
Yes, that's a great question. I would say maybe two things. Like one, his writings, like about other religions, and one about his meeting of the representatives of other religions. So as for writings, he definitely discussed numerous other religions as well, and one research which we have done so far is that comparing the terms which he used in relation to other religions. So one being Christianity, and then also Islam, Hinduism, Judaism, and Confucianism, Taoism. And what shows is that that he tackled topics which are actually highly related to those particular religions. So what feeds into our discussion about Christianity and science is that among the first 20 most used terms in his discussion of Christianity, science and philosophy and research already featured there. So it shows that he was actually interested in these aspects of the religion. And then for other religions, again, different topics come up. For Islam, it's a lot about governance, about yes, laws, and then similarly from Confucianism, it's a lot about society, about governance again, and then for Hinduism, it's interesting. This touches upon quite a bit on monastic ways of life and different trends of Hinduism and Buddhism in their relation. So he does discuss all these other religions as well. And then for the meetings, yes, definitely. So he had a large trip in the in the end of the 1930s, at the time of the after the Japanese invasion started. So the great tour in Southeast Asia to basically raise funding from overseas Chinese communities for the war effort. And then during this trip, he actually traveled to Lumbini, the Buddha's birthplace, and then was welcomed there by Buddhists and others, and also to Varanasi, and then down to numerous other like Southeast Asian countries. So yes, he definitely met representatives of other religions there, and what was also important in terms of what you mentioned in terms of the other important figures of the time in this field of religions, was that he met GP Malalasekera from Sri Lanka in Shanghai, and then when Malalasekera actually founded the World Buddhist organization, which became the overarching global institution for Buddhism. Then he actually claims that one of the reasons he founded the organization was the impulse by Master Taixu and his global visions of Buddhism. So yes, I think he was exposed to several of these figures of the time, and also in writing, of course, he read numerous texts of Western authors like Huxley. In terms of education, Montessori, and also, of course, at the beginning of his life, numerous socialist and anarchist writers. So I think he seemed to have a pretty large basis of knowledge.
I see. Yes. Well, it leads to one important question that we haven't really touched is that one thing is to engage in conversations with other religious traditions and approaches, but if the conclusion is that Buddhism is superior, then it does not seem to advance so much our understanding of the supposed common ground shared by these traditions. So I was wondering if there is any mention of the experiential dimension of religion that could be shared beyond the confines of Buddhism by looking at, for instance, awakening, that is the ultimate purpose of Buddhism. Is there something similar that could be reached through other approaches?
Yeah, this is a very great question as well. I think I was not sure. Benoit, do you want to say a comment on the previous point?
No, actually, what Michel says goes very well with what I wanted to stress, which is that Taixu made a choice, the one of stressing the so-called scientific and practical aspect of Buddhism and Christianity, with the fact that finally Buddhism is superior in both aspects to Christianity, even if it has aspects to learn from Christianity. But that was not the only choice that was possible. Actually, at the end of the 19th century, there are two ways of considering the rapprochement or dialogue among religions that it shows in the Chicago Congress as well. There is indeed a scientific aspect, and there is a mystical one, which are not contradictory, but there is a total difference of stress. So Taixu is completely on the first aspect, and at the end, it shows its limits. When you look at Chinese Buddhism after 1980, actually, it is a triumph of Taixu Buddhism in this world approach. Taixu somehow has won in China. but it marks though the limits of present-day Chinese Buddhism. I mean, the lack of the mystical dimension, the lack of the stress on awakening, also makes it much more difficult to find the common ground of the mystical experience to be found in other religions. On the other hand, probably Taixu had no other choice. There was no knowledge of the mystical dimension of Christianity at that time, and some in China, I mean. And just a little before Taixu, the great translator Yan Fu offered an interpretation in the Lao Tzu in which the Tao Te Ching, believe it or not, is a precursor of modern science. Of the whole text of the Lao Tzu, and it runs for hundreds of pages, can be explained through the scientists, Western scientists of the 19th century. Though Taixu does for Buddhism what Yan Fu does for Taoism in some respect. There is no other way to reinterpret one's own tradition than to give it a scientific and practical dimension. Okay, so I think for the time it was a wonderful adventure. But once this adventure, I would say, has culturally vanished, as it has been the case in China after 1980s, well, the element indeed of dialogue and depth, experiential depth, as I like the word experiential are just being used by Michel now, might be eventually lacking, at least at what I would suggest.
In this regard, what about Thomas Merton? You wrote about him, Peter.
Exactly. Yes, this is what I wanted to say. Exactly. Thank you. Yes. So just a few decades after Taixu, there is a discussion of Merton and Suzuki, and then afterwards Merton and Thich Nhat Hanh. So yes, definitely, I would say that that there is a strong way to connect the two religions in a more spiritual sense. In that way, focusing on enlightenment, focusing on yes, exactly. Just the mystical experience, the mystical unity between the believer and God, and how, yes. So Merton quotes the whole tradition of Christian mystics, including Saint John of the Cross, Teresa of Avila, and the early Neoplatonic
Nothing
thinkers.
of that can be found in Master Taixu. This is a question. Absolutely nothing of it can be found or at least guessed or hinted at in the writing of Taixu. I'm just asking you about that. Did you find
Yeah,
anything about that kind of
yes.
dimension?
I have not seen anything yet. No, not so far.
That's striking when you think about it, even for the time.
Yes. But I would agree with you that this was the only way they could proceed, because I think also Taishu's point, like what I gathered from his writings, that he had to make a case in the early Republic era that Buddhism is not a superstition. All these practices which the monks do are not central to Buddhism, and what is real Buddhism is Yogacara. So this was his choice. That way, like in the line of Yang Wenhui, and then in discussion and sometimes disagreeing with Ouyang Qingwu, that Yogacara is the way. And then because it is scientific and explainable and philosophical. And I think as you said, this was the only way, because what can also be felt in China, I think, these days, is that whatever is science, whatever is scientific, is valuable. And so many things are measured on against science and being scientific. So I believe that this was, based on the text, it seems that this was even more the case in the early 20th century, especially with the general global view or tendency towards this, that they had to focus on this aspect. But I think it truly is interesting, and maybe it is different than in Japan, Michel. Maybe there was a stronger sense of having Zen and Christian spirituality and in Jesuit meditation somehow like put into dialogue. This might happen, might have happened less in China, maybe in the time.
Thank you. Yes. So this may be a good time to conclude our conversation, and also it opens up a lot of interesting perspectives in terms of what possibilities lie ahead in terms of focusing more on not only the philosophical, but also the experiential dimension or the mystical dimension of those different approaches, and how the contribution of Taixu to those dialogues has evolved over time, and we can sort of take it from there. But we really appreciate your contribution to this dialogue, and we are blessed to have had the presence of Professor Fermander from Shanghai. It's a truly international venture, and I'll hand over the conclusion of this webinar to our host, Ni Zhang. Thank you all for attending.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's a wonderful discussion. So we just run out of time. So before we close today's session, I would like to announce our CCS webinar program Spring 2025, which will be released January next year. So stay tuned to our webinar announcement. And also to conclude our session today, please join us in a round of applause for our 3 panelists today, giving such an insightful discussions. We spent a really great afternoon together. So yeah, many thanks as well to our audience for your attendance and the comments and questions. So please remember to fill out the survey after this event. So we're looking forward to see you guys next time.
Thanks to all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, to all of you.
And special thanks to Peter, of course.
Thank you, Ian.